This is Sony's brand new FE 50mm f1.4 G Master lens. It's the newest Sony lens in the 50mm lineup in what is becoming an increasingly crowded space. We already had a number of 50mm for the Sony, including the older Sony 50mm 1.4 Zeiss lens and Sony's 50mm f1.2 G Master lens. Also within the last couple of weeks, we got Sigma's brand new 50mm f1.4 DG/DN Art lens, which is a great lens at a fantastic price. This will not be a comparison directly between the Sony lens and the 50mm Sigma lens. I am going to mention them both a little bit because they are both targeted at the same user and they both came out within weeks of each other, which is really incredibly strange. In this video, I'm going to tell you all about the new 50mm 1.4 G Master based on my weeks of shooting with the lens. I'm going to talk to you about whether it's the right lens for you or not, and where it fits in Sony's increasingly complicated 50mm lineup. This is Dave Tries This. I'm David Schloss. Let's give this a try. Before I get started, if you're new to this channel, hello, welcome, thank you so much for being here. Please take a second to hit the like and subscribe button. It really helps out. If you are a returning visitor to the channel, hello, welcome back. Let's start off talking about the specs of this 50mm f1.4 lens. Sony's new nifty 50 f1.4 G Master lens weighs in at a scant 516 grams, that is without the hood or the cap, although my scale came in just a little bit lower at 514 grams. It comes in just about 4 inches tall, 3 inches in diameter, and it has a 67mm filter thread. The lens has a US price of $1,300, which makes it $72,000 Canadian. Sony's G Master line is their pinnacle in lens design, and the 50mm f1.4 is no exception. In fact, this lens takes advantage of all of the technologies that have come before it in the G Master lens. When you talk to Sony about the G Master, they can't quite put their finger on what makes something a G Master lens. Originally, it had something to do with the resolution of the lens, and then they added more features to the G Master lenses, features like the aperture control ring. Those features have moved on to the G series of lenses, sometimes to lenses that aren't even the G series. And so it's not the features or the controls, it's not necessarily the resolution that makes the G Master lens, it's the whole package that Sony considers to be part of their pinnacle series, the G Master lenses. The 50mm G Master has some of my favorite features. Let's start with the aperture control ring, which is one of my favorite things about this lens and about any lens with an aperture control ring. I'm an old school OG shooter. I feel that all lenses should really have the aperture control ring. At worst case, you put it in the automatic setting and you control the aperture using the dials on your camera. In the best case setting, when you're trying to control things manually, you have the ability to adjust this in third of a stop clicks. If you're a video shooter, you can also declick the lens. I don't actually think declick is a word, but that's what everybody says. You can unclick the lens, you can declick the lens, and when you declick the lens, you can move it smoothly and you hear almost no noise. The lens also has an iris lock switch on it. What the iris lock does is when you put the lens over in the automatic setting and you slide the iris lock, it keeps it from coming out of the automatic setting. That way you can control the aperture only with the dial that's on the camera. There's also the mandatory autofocus to manual focus switch on the lens and 2 custom programmable function buttons. Designed specifically with video shooters in mind, the lens is fly-by-wire. All mirrorless lenses with linear motors are fly-by-wire, which means that when you're turning the dial, there's no physical connection to the focusing system. So when you turn the dials on Sony lenses, what you're actually doing is sending a signal to the camera that tells the camera how to focus. Inside that lens, you're going to find 14 elements in 11 groups, including 2 XA extreme spherical lens elements, 1 ED, not that kind of ED, extra low dispersion element. The lens is driven by 2 of Sony's XD linear motors. Now, these motors are incredibly fast, and they move at lightning speed with almost no friction, which is what allows the lens to both be smaller and lighter, but also faster at autofocus as well, because as you reduce the size of the motors, you can reduce the size of the glass, you could reduce the size of the body. The whole thing together makes a nice, smaller, lighter package. Now, the linear motors and the elements inside the lens, they're all there for shooting experience. So what is the shooting experience like on this lens? It's getting a little bit difficult to review lenses these days because they're all so good, and this is another one of those really good, actually really excellent pieces of glass. I know I say that a lot when it comes to lenses. Lenses are so good these days, and the G Master lenses are always excellent. I did note though that with this lens, when it came to doing animal, I detect the Sigma 50mm actually seemed a little bit better at doing the subject recognition, but I'm really going to have to go back and do some more side-by-side comparisons with this just for that other video that I'm making on the 2 lenses next to each other. But it was interesting to see the other lens performing at least as well as the Sony lens in situations where Sony's image recognition technology was at play. Now, there's one area though that the Sigma lens cannot touch the Sony lens, and that is the frame rate when used on a camera like the Sony A1. At 30 frames a second, this new 50mm f1.4 G Master lens can do 30 frames a second, which is the top speed of the Sony A1. The Sigma 50mm, however, cannot. It is limited at 15 frames per second. Now, Sony says that again, this has to do with how the engineers know how to design the lenses to talk to the sensors. I don't know. Could be a cripple hammer. That could be true. All I know is that if you want the most out of the Sony lens and the Sony A1 system, you're going to want a Sony G Master lens in order to pull that off. Here's a selection of some of the images that I have shot with the lens so far, and I am loving the look of these. Of course, the most important thing with a lens is how the images look, and the images from the Sony 50mm f1.4 G Master look spectacular. They are fantastic looking. Subject detail is sharp, the bokeh is beautiful and soft, image quality is great, there is very little vignetting to no vignetting at the corners, and I have yet to see any chromatic aberration with these lenses. There's one more 50mm lens that I want to compare this to, and this is the Sony 50mm f1.2 G Master, a lens that came out several years ago. I think the differences between this lens and the Zeiss lens are going to be obvious to people, but I'm not sure that people are going to know why they should buy an f1.4 lens instead of an f1.2 lens. One of the big things is that the f1.2 lens is a lot more expensive than the f1.4 lens, so okay, if you want to spend less money, you can go ahead and buy this lens. If you're doing the absolute highest end portrait work and you want to make sure that your lens is the absolute highest quality, bar none, that you can get at the 50mm focal length, get the 50mm f1.2, even though it costs more money. However, that lens is bigger and it is heavier. The 50mm f1.2 is not a lens that you might want to walk around the street carrying, but the 50mm f1.4 is. At 4 inches long, it really doesn't look like a big, heavy, expensive lens. In fact, it's so nicely balanced that I put it on the A7R5 and I put it on DJI's newest DJI RS3 Mini gimbal, which is a lightweight gimbal designed to hold up to an A7 series camera and a 24-70 G Master lens. This is lighter and shorter than that G Master lens, fits on the gimbal perfectly. Swinging around to things that I don't like about the lens, there really aren't a lot of them. The only thing really that I can think of is that this lens is made out of engineering plastic instead of metal. You can hear that plasticky sound. I don't know what engineering plastic is. It's the term that Sony uses when I ask them about the materials used in this. It's a mix of metal and engineering plastic. I would think that all plastic would be engineered. It's not like somebody just wrapped plastic around the lens, and so there must be some sort of material qualities to this that keep it from breaking or scratching in a fall. In fact, I've never dropped an engineering plastic lens and had it have anything like a dent or a scratch in it like with a metal lens. I just feel like the metal lenses are more durable, but maybe the engineering plastic protects some of the elements inside. If you know anything about engineering plastic, can you please leave comments below? I would love to know more about that. So should you buy this lens? That is a little bit complicated without getting too deeply into comparisons between different lenses, but let's try and break it down like this. The manufacturer lenses will always perform better at something than third-party lenses. There are a number of factors that go into lens design, and the manufacturers are able to optimize all of those, at least in their highest-end lenses. For many people, the manufacturer lens is the way to go, even if there's a similar or equal lens at a way lower price. And the reason for that is simply knowing that the lens will be supported going into the future with whatever technology comes out in the camera system. For the 50mm though, what you buy depends on what you shoot most often. If you're a portrait shooter, if you're a wedding shooter, if you're someone who is doing portrait type work every day, all day long, even if you're someone doing food or documentary photography and you want a fantastic quality lens, the manufacturer lens is most likely the way you're going to want to go. If you're an occasional 50mm shooter, sure, $1,300 is way too much for the lens. And so if you're in the market for a 50mm and it's one of your bread and butter lenses, you cannot go wrong with Sony's 50mm f1.4 G Master lens. It is a spectacular lens with spectacular image quality in a small size and a compact package, and it is a lens that's going to go down as one of Sony's best, most functional 50mm lenses. And that's saying a lot because Sony has a lot of 50mm lenses right now. So what about you? Is this the kind of lens that you want to buy? Are you thinking about the Sigma lens? If so, why? Or are you thinking about the 50mm f1.2 or the older Zeiss lens? Let me know in the comments below what you think. I am really interested because this is such a crowded space. I'd like to know what people are thinking about these type of lenses. You can find more of my lens reviews right up here. You can subscribe to the channel right over here, and down here you can get yourself some sweet, sweet merch. As always, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this. For Dave Tries This, I'm David Schloss. Thanks so much for giving this a try.